Awesome. So, hi, I'm Julia. I recognize some of you. I don't recognize some of you. That's amazing. I love to see new and old folks here as well. I use she, her pronouns. I live on Wabanaki land. A quick visual description is that I'm a Palestinian American with short brown hair, a beige headband, and a gray shirt. My background is the Palestinian flag with our Centering Palestine logo on it. We are going to, could one of my co-hosts pop the packet in the chat? I recommend that you go ahead and open up that packet. It has all our links. Zoom can be a little glitchy about links sometimes. So if you go ahead and check out that packet, then everything is there for you. This event is organized by many volunteers, including Palestinian, Jewish, and ally contributors. I'm going to briefly go over our community agreements. And yeah, let's dive in. You can see the fuller version probably on that document actually that you came here through to find that Zoom link, but here's the short version just for time's sake. So we are COVID cautious. This event is organized by COVID cautious folks, and we ask that attendees be respectful of that intersection. What that means practically at these sessions is that we don't discuss organizing in ways that don't include taking important accessibility measures like COVID precautions. We are, of course, a pro-Palestine space. We support the liberation of Palestine and are anti-Zionist. We do not tolerate anti-Semitism or Islamophobia of any kind. We are anti-Zionist, and anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Zionism is a settler colonial nationalist movement. Geopolitical powers like the US and Israeli governments have tried to make Zionism and Jewishness synonymous, but this is inaccurate and only serves to further harm Jewish and Palestinian communities. We center marginalized voices, especially Palestinians right now. We use content warnings when appropriate. In terms of chat etiquette, I appreciate how polite everyone is. You're welcome to use the chat to ask questions. We just ask that any chats stay focused on the topic at hand so we can make sure that we get through all of our important information tonight. With that, we are doing things a little bit different. We try and keep everything fresh for all of you. What I found as I was creating tonight's presentation is that the news and education really kind of merged into one because it is so much about current events. So I'm going to share my slides and we're going to dive into this kind of merged session together. And we will have, so this first half is going to be focused on education and news updates. Our second half is going to have breakout rooms where we can complete some really awesome actions together. So today's focus, we really wanted to talk about Rafah with just what's been happening in the last week, as well as some current events mixed in here. So I wanted to start by these are a couple great updates from the account Let's Talk Palestine because of how, unfortunately, Instagram and Meta is their main account, which is just called Let's Talk Palestine, is being shadow banned. And so this is, if you want to go read this more, it's actually Let's Talk Palestine 2, and you'll see that in our links. But I just wanted to do a little catch up here. So in terms of what's been happening in this past week in Rafah, let's start on the left of the screen. So instead of accepting a ceasefire, that night Israel launched nonstop bombardment on eastern Rafah, bombing homes and killing at least 12 Palestinians, continuing aerial strikes on Rafah through the night into the morning. Israeli tanks took control of Rafah crossing. They've shut down the crossing into Egypt, cutting off Gaza's supply of aid. Israel has issued evacuation orders for eastern Rafah, ordering 100,000 Palestinians to flee. The UN says that southern Gaza and the rest of Rafah there isn't prepared for so many refugees, and there's no proper evacuation corridors at this point. These attacks are, of course, jeopardizing the ceasefire negotiations, and there's just a quote here from the Norwegian Refugee Council, saying that Israel's forced unlawful evacuation order could initiate the deadliest phase of this conflict so far. So that is the very short summary of what's been going on in Rafah. And I wanted to clarify because this has also been something that I don't feel like our mainstream media is doing a good job of explaining, which is that Israel rejected the ceasefire deal that Hamas accepted. This was right before they invaded Rafah. Hamas had agreed to a deal, and Israel rejected it. So it would have been a three-phase ceasefire, which included a truce where Israel would withdraw troops. It would include a permanent end to military operations in Gaza, which is so desperately needed, an exchange of hostages and prisoners. So this was agreed to. We had basically a ceasefire deal on the table. And many people are saying that Israel has been disingenuous in this process the entire time in terms of ceasefire negotiations, because why would they immediately start attacking Rafah when they knew that would destroy the current ceasefire talks? So not going to lie, that is definitely a big mess right now. There's a huge push and an important push on social media to keep our eyes on Rafah because of what's happening, how horrible it is. And we also need to make sure that we're keeping the context of we almost had a ceasefire there, and clearly the Israeli government is not acting in good faith. So that's just to catch up from basically Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of last week. Going on to our next slides here, I've got some more general updates again from the Let's Talk Palestine broadcast channel. So the total and just some content warning. Obviously, it's very serious topics tonight. We have put some content warnings later in the slides for more graphic information. I will keep these current slides more summaries, high-level summaries. So these are just a couple more updates from that account. The death toll has surpassed 35,000, and that doesn't include the estimated over 10,000 missing. We know that this has been an undercount because it has been stuck at 35,000 for weeks. And of course, we see what's happening, unfortunately, on our social media, on our feeds. We know we just talked about the Israeli forces have launched that offensive into Gaza, really destroying ceasefire talks. We'll get into this later, but Egypt announced its intent to join South Africa, and they actually did. South Africa's ICJ case, that is huge. We will get into that later. We also, again, I'll talk a little bit about college campus encampments later, but 76 universities in Spain suspended collaboration agreements with Israeli universities and research centers. So it's really cool to see when, almost 2 weeks ago, or I guess 3 weeks ago now, there were just a few encampments in New York City, and now there's all over the world. I find that really encouraging in a very, very dark time. And speaking of which, we have seen that no aid trucks have entered Gaza since last Saturday because of that Rafah crossing being cut down. Let's see. That's the summaries I'm going to leave for now. You can definitely come back to these links and read more later for sure. A few headlines I wanted to bring up about kind of the severity of what's happening in Rafah. Israel has shut Rafah's largest hospital. Those who can flee have. However, many patients are not able to. Like, that's why, they're in a hospital. They need medical care. So updates are really sparse, specifically about the hospital, because it's in a quote unquote combat zone. So that's just, another horrible list, a horrible thing to add to our list. A couple organizations I wanted to flag. Doctors Without Borders made a public post emphasizing that Rafah is where 1.5 million Palestinians were told they could seek refuge. But now Israel has invaded and cutting off aid into Gaza, escape out of Gaza. So I'm really glad to see, these major humanitarian institutions making it very clear what's happening. Similarly, I'm actually going to I'm going to change up my order, go to the last point. We talk about Palestine Children's Relief Fund a lot. They also released a statement reiterating that this is a humanitarian crisis. There are 600,000 children in Rafah, and we need to let aid through. Any attack on Rafah is an attack on children. So I really encourage you. I know that I'm so grateful for all of you. We're in this bubble where we're more in the know about Palestine. If you still have family members and friends, and it can be hard across political divides that don't know much about Palestine or are not convinced, I really encourage you to share that Doctors Without Borders statement or that Palestine Children's Relief Fund statement, because those are, quote unquote, more neutral, that are really speaking to the humanitarian crisis. The last thing I wanted to mention on this slide comes this video from Bridget, beautiful, heartbreaking video. She's a midwife and healthcare worker that literally, she's a healthcare worker that volunteered to go into Gaza. And she's reporting from the last maternity hospital in Rafah. This ward was built to serve about 90 births a month because Rafah's It's actually pretty small. And they're now seeing 1,500 births a month. There aren't enough people or supplies, and closing the border means that healthcare workers and supplies can't get in. That's like the only entrance. So again, a really moving video if you want to share, if you want to try and reach people that way. I don't know how you can watch that video and not be moved. Okay, so big content warning. I promise at the end I do have some more uplifting stuff, so bear with me. But content warning, our next topic is really serious. We do really need to talk about it. I totally understand if you are out of spoons, if you need to turn the volume down, that's totally okay. You will see on the screen when it's lifted, so that is totally up to you. I will give you a minute to get adjusted, and I will add this is even more serious than we generally talk about, so if you have kids in earshot, definitely time for headphones. All right, so you probably have maybe seen this headline. 3 Israeli whistleblowers went to CNN. They risked a lot to get us these details, saying that the information they are sharing would haunt them forever. I have done a really short summary. I'm going to keep it short so that I keep it together. The article is absolutely brutal. I'm really grateful that these folks came forward to a big major news publication. I think that it makes a huge difference to see it, not that CNN is my favorite anything, but to see it on a big platform like that is really important. So this is just going to be the summary. A military base in Israel has been turned into a detention center where there are pictures, there are photos of rows of Palestinian men being held captive behind barbed wire. They are blindfolded, not allowed to talk to each other, not allowed to move. Anyone that speaks is punished. They are treated absolutely brutally, stripped, neglected medically and physically and mentally harmed. A whistleblower commented that this operation is being done entirely out of revenge. It's not about information, it's about revenge. This is not a new practice. There are dozens of accounts depicting similar treatment at this and other facilities. When I tell you I don't have the words for the horrors depicted in this report, and it comes on the heels of a 7th mass grave being discovered in Gaza. So absolutely horrifying. Again, I don't have words. I am really glad that this is on CNN and that it is getting attention. I hope it gets more because of how just truly, truly horrific it is. So I wanted to share, I wanted to make sure we were on the same page about that. I also want to give us a minute to regroup because even just considering that concentration camp, if you go and read that article fully, you're going to need a second. It is a lot to take in. So this is what I wrote to just help us regroup and make sure that we can keep doing what we need to do. So it is a lot to take in. Even just a glimpse makes me sick to my stomach. It was so hard to read that article. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to acknowledge and honor and witness the truth to the best of our individual ability. We also need strength and calm so that we can act wisely and effectively to help these folks. So I'm going to walk us through just a little, I guess, grounding exercise. So I want to give us a second just to sit with our feelings for a moment. You're allowed to feel anything you want to feel. Your feelings make sense. Just let them be, whether that is fear or anger or despair, whatever you're feeling. I'm just going to give us a second to be silent and feel those. Okay. Let's take the next moment to bring ourselves back to our current surroundings. I invite you to notice the room that you're sitting in and to remind yourself that you are safe where you are. Okay. Thank you for coming along this journey with me. I do really want to stress that what you're feeling just means you're human. It means you're leaning into your empathy. And also that it's our job, with all the privilege that we have not being in Gaza right now, to make sure that our energy and our motivation doesn't get wasted. I know it's really hard, and it's allowed to be two things at once. It can be really hard, and it can also be our honor and our duty to struggle through all of it until Palestine is free. I also want to say I've been looking at the chat, and I definitely agree with all of that. But I agree, the language of calling it a detention center really bothers me. Absolutely. I was noticing that as well, and it's one of those concessions, unfortunately, I think they made to get it published, but really brutally underplays what's happening. And I definitely see all of this here too, the denial and downplaying of everything Israel is doing to Palestinians. The whistleblowers might be downplaying to reduce retaliation. That was something that the article brings up, that these whistleblowers are really walking dangerous ground in terms of retaliation that they could face to get us this information. Okay, so content warning lifted. I'll give us a second to turn our volumes back on. Thank you all. I'm sorry, I know I'm talking a lot tonight, but thank you for taking the time. I do have some more encouraging slides coming up, and then we're going to dive into our actions together. First, some US updates, which is kind of a mixed bag. So I'm just doing some headlines. You can definitely read further, especially if there's something that catches your interest. So we all knew this first update, we all knew, but Romney admits push to ban on TikTok is aimed at censoring news out of Gaza. I just took this little quote, but basically there's a video of Romney saying the quiet part out loud. So some wonder why there is such an overwhelming support for us to shut down potentially TikTok or other entities of that nature. If you look at the postings on TikTok and the number of mentions of Palestinians relative to other social media sites, it's overwhelmingly so among TikTok broadcasts. So it definitely feels like one of those moments where you're like, okay, you're straight up saying what we all thought. Okay. So there's that acknowledgement. There's that, latest in our US news. There's also two links here that I think are going to continue to be important in our actions coming up, which is the work to create these so-called anti-Semitism bills that really don't address anti-Semitism and that are just trying to stop any discussions about Palestine or any movement for Palestine. I thought this quote was really important right now. I think it's on a lot of our minds. Those who claim a second Donald Trump term would mark the end of democracy need to stop passing overbroad and unnecessary new laws, handing him and future authoritarians brand new ways to harass and silence journalists who don't toe the line. So that article is more specifically talking to nonprofit media, but I think that is a concern that many of us are feeling right now. And a couple more things for the US here. Israel likely used US supplied weapons in violation of international law. We know this. The fact that the State Department is sort of admitting this is a little bit of progress. Hopefully we can build on it. Nothing, unfortunately, there is no, what's the word there? As usual, the State Department is not acting as quickly and Biden's administration is not acting with the swiftness we wish they would. And to that point, the next headline here is even Biden's lawyers are urging the White House to change course on Gaza. So I thought this was quite a stunning quote that I didn't expect to see as I was doing the news this week. It said, this quote here says, in a message to the Attorney General and other senior officials, federal government attorneys invoked British abolitionist William Wilberforce, saying, you may choose to look the other way, but you can never say again that you did not know. So that is really brutal to be like the conversation that is not only internally happening in Biden's administration, but the fact that that gets published for all of us to read, that was quite shocking in a good way to me to see. And then the last thing that, again, is that kind of medium, okay, we'll take it. It's not as good as it needs to be, but the US did block some of the bombs being shipped to Israel. It doesn't help that there are many other weapons that they're shipping and money, but I am glad that they made this tiny movement. So it's a very mixed bag. You can catch up there more on the kinds of bombs that have been paused for now. Okay, this is where our last two slides are happier or some encouragement to mix in here. So a few resources I wanted to tag at the top, especially if you know folks or want to support folks who are, especially students who are doing these encampments. So there's a support guide for students organizing for a free Palestine. There's that third one is notes on care around protest. That middle one, I really wanted to flag, especially for our group as COVID cautious folks. Mask Up, We Need You is a great zine, I don't know how you say that, a great zine, I think, on Palestine and pandemic solidarity. And I am so happy to see that crossover happening because I think we can all feel here that that crossover needs to happen more. There continues to be many, many encampments, I think over 235 now. There unfortunately does continue to be police brutality against these students, especially in the South. There have been some positive, I wasn't even able to log all of them because there's so many, but I know that California State University and Union Theological Seminary that is connected to Columbia have made some really positive progress toward divestment. There are now at least 35 countries with college encampments for Palestine. And the first faculty-led encampment has begun in NYC. I'm so proud of the students that continue this work, and I'm so proud to see these faculty members standing up for their students as well. I also put one last little link in there as it's graduation season. So these students continue to bravely face the intersections of liberation for Palestine and fascism in America. So definitely check out that video where students are using their graduation ceremony to stand up for Palestine. Some really beautiful things to see in that clip. And some positive news, I'm fairly certain this is my last slide, we'll find out. But we wanted to include these in here too. So Palestine students in Hebron have returned to school after 209 days. So the story here is that education has been online since October 7th because the IOF prevented any Palestinian children from passing through checkpoints to school or any other place within this restricted area, meaning that they weren't allowed to go to school. And this is not just in this area. I have heard about this happening in a lot of other areas, even in what is so-called Israel proper as well, where Palestinian students are being blocked from their education. Like I mentioned earlier, I hinted at, in a bold and unprecedented move, Egypt has officially joined South Africa's ICJ case. I love the quote that everyone's using because it is a good quote, but it's an unbelievable diplomatic blow to Israel. Egypt hasn't been involved in these negotiations for some time. And I think this is very much in response to Israel's latest attack in Rafah. I think they said, if you're not going to take, Egypt is saying, if you're not going to take negotiations seriously, congrats, we're now going over to South Africa's team. So that is a really encouraging thing to see. And I think as they should, they are lending their weight to that case as well. The last thing I had to mention, we all know and love Bassan. Bassan and AJ Plus have won the Peabody Award, or win a Peabody Award, I should say, for their Gaza war coverage. Go see, of course, I always say this, but go see Bassan's full video. It's so beautiful, and I struggled to just pick one quote, but she writes here, "Thank you so much for this award and for always supporting us, standing by us, and for continuing to do so until we reach our demands, an end to genocide, a ceasefire, and a free Palestine."